As I was helping set up the wedding bed, something caught my eye, a faint stain on the sheets. I froze. This was supposed to be my new home, my fresh start. But now, standing there with the evidence right in front of me, it was glaringly obvious, someone else had already been here. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and called Zachary. To my surprise, he picked up instantly. But it wasn't him. The person who appeared on the screen was Fiona, his assistant. She tilted her head, her lips curling into a smug, sultry smile. "Oh, the new bed? It's super comfy," she purred, her voice dripping with mockery. "Don't worry, I tested it out for you." Her tone was light and teasing, but her eyes, they were full of arrogance, daring me to react as if she knew she'd already won. I hung up without a word. Whatever this was, whatever Zachary and I had been, it was over. For good. Chapter 1. Where's Zachary? Put him on the phone. The video call connected, but instead of Zachary, Fiona, his assistant, appeared on the screen. I froze for a moment, caught off guard. But I quickly masked my surprise, forcing my expression into calm neutrality. Fiona, however, didn't seem in any hurry to speak. She looked smug as her eyes wandered over my surroundings, as though she were inspecting every detail of the room. Finally, she smiled, a delicate, mocking curve of her lips. "Oh, Melissa," she said, drawing out my name with a tone that made my skin crawl. "You're at the new house, aren't you?" She paused, tilting her head in mock thought before continuing. "The new bed is so soft, by the way. Don't worry, I made sure to test it out for you." Her words sent a jolt through me, like the ground had been ripped out from under my feet. For a moment, I couldn't even think. My mind buzzed with static as if the world had gone completely silent. I stared at her through the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone. My throat felt like it had closed up, and no words came. Fiona's gaze flicked toward the bed behind me, and her smirk deepened. "Oh, and Zachary?" she added, her voice dripping with fox sweetness. "He's fantastic too. Don't worry, I tested him out as well." The venom in her words was unmistakable. That's when I noticed something in the background of her video call. The room she was in wasn't Zachary's office. It was a hotel room. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm despite the fire burning in my chest. "Where is Zachary?" I asked again, my voice steady but icy cold. Fiona's eyes sparkled with amusement as she glanced off screen, pretending to hesitate. "Oh, Zachary? He's working late, of course. You know how busy he is." And then I heard it. His voice. "Fiona, come help me scrub my back." Those words hit me like a slap across the face. I froze, my lips parting, but no sound came out. Fiona turned back to the camera, her expression triumphantly smug. "You're just trying to trick me into joining you in the shower, aren't you? Naughty boy." She tossed me one last mocking glance before ending the call. I stared at the blank screen, my chest heaving as I struggled to process what had just happened. Then, as if every muscle in my body had given out at once, I sank to the floor. The anger, the humiliation, the heartbreak, it all crashed over me like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, an empty, bitter laugh escaped my throat. The wedding bed? I didn't care about it anymore. I ripped the stained sheets off and tossed them into the trash. Tomorrow was supposed to be my wedding day. While I'd been busy decorating our new home, Zachary had been busy sharing a bath with his assistant. "Congratulations, Fiona. You wanted to ruin my wedding, and you succeeded." I picked up my phone, my hands steady now, and typed out a message to Zachary. "We're done. The wedding's off." A tainted house? I didn't need it. A tainted man? I didn't want him. My eyes landed on the wedding figurines sitting on the table. Then, I turned to the wall. The wedding photo. The frame shattered the moment it hit the floor. Piece by piece, I tore apart the room I had painstakingly decorated for what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The flowers, the candles, the ribbons, all of it. By the time I was done, the room was as broken as I felt. Once everything was destroyed, I sat down, breathing hard, and sent messages to all the guests canceling the wedding. Then, I powered off my phone. In the silence that followed, I forced myself not to think about the years I had wasted on Zachary, the promises, the memories, the lies. Instead, I grabbed a bottle of wine and drank until the world blurred, and sleep finally came. The next morning, I was jolted awake by a furious pounding on the door. I groaned, my head pounding, and stumbled out of bed. When I opened the door, Zachary and his groomsmen stood in the hallway, all dressed to perfection in sharp suits, their faces carefully composed. But Zachary? His composure cracked the moment he saw me. The bouquet of roses in his hand hit the ground, petals scattering everywhere as his face twisted in anger. "Melissa! Are you insane?" His voice was loud enough to make my headache worse, but I didn't miss the way his expression contorted. The man looked ridiculous, like a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. And for some reason, I found it funny. I laughed. The sound made his face darken further. "You think this is funny?" Zachary shouted, his voice rising with every word. "Do you even understand what you've done? Today is our wedding day." Chapter 2. I rubbed my eyes, my head throbbing from last night's hangover. Being disturbed while nursing a hangover? Absolutely the worst. I didn't bother hiding my irritation and snapped. "Didn't I make myself clear? The wedding is off. We're done, Zachary. What part of that don't you understand?" Zachary's bloodshot eyes narrowed, his entire face tight with barely suppressed rage. He looked like he was seconds away from exploding, but instead, he took a deep breath, shut his eyes for a moment, and then spoke through gritted teeth. "If you get dressed and come with me right now," he said slowly, like he was doing me a favor. "I'll pretend none of this ever happened. I'll let it go. I'll forgive you just this once." "Forgive me?" I almost laughed at the sheer audacity. This man actually thought I couldn't live without him, that I was some pathetic, lovesick woman who'd come crawling back the moment he offered me his so-called forgiveness. Seriously? I glanced past him at his groomsmen, who were standing awkwardly behind him. Their faces said it all. They were enjoying the drama, though a few of them looked like they were trying and failing to hide their amusement. I crossed my arms, my voice sharp and cold. "Zachary, you're the one who cheated. You're the one who messed this up. Are you here to talk about your little fling with Fiona? Or are you still pretending nothing happened?" I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "Get out. We're done. Do you hear me? Done." For a moment, he just stood there, blinking like he couldn't comprehend what I'd just said. Then, his face twisted, his confidence cracking. The arrogance he'd walked in with disappeared in an instant. But he didn't leave. Instead, his tone shifted, softening into something almost pitiful. "You've got it all wrong," he said, shaking his head like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "This is my fault. I should have explained things earlier." He paused, his voice dropping into something quieter, something pleading. "You can yell at me, hit me, do whatever you want later. But today's our wedding, Melissa. It's the most important day of our lives. Everyone is waiting. Please, don't make a scene. Just come with me. Let's get through this and we'll work it all out later, I promise." He even managed a bitter little smile, like he was the one being wronged, like I was the unreasonable one here. The nerve of this man. I glanced back at his groomsmen. Their expressions were a mix of pity and judgment. One of them, probably his closest friend, stepped forward and tried to mediate. "Melissa," he said, his voice overly gentle. "This really isn't the time to act out. After the wedding, you can deal with everything however you want. But for now, don't ruin everyone's day, all right?" Ah, so that's what this was. Zachary was trying to force me into a corner to make me look like the bad guy in front of all these people. Fine. If he wanted to play this game, I'd play it. But he'd regret it soon enough. I gave them a small, tight nod. "All right. Wait here." I went back inside, washed my face, and threw on a simple dress I'd grabbed from the closet. No makeup, no elaborate wedding gown, just me, plain and unpolished. When I stepped out again, Zachary's face immediately darkened. "Where are you going? Aren't you going to change? Put on your makeup?" "No," I said flatly. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He must have realized that no amount of coaxing or pressuring would work on me right now. We arrived at the hotel, and the tension in the air was almost suffocating. His family filled the room, chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened. My side of the family, on the other hand, had already heard about the cancelled wedding. They looked confused and uncomfortable, unsure what to make of the situation. The moment I walked in, the room fell silent. My plain outfit stuck out like a sore thumb amidst the glamorous decorations. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and a few of Zachary's aunts couldn't resist chiming in. How could she pull a stunt like this on her wedding day? One of them muttered, loud enough for me to hear. "So childish. Poor Zachary, he's too patient with her." "Exactly," another added, shaking her head. "If she didn't want to get married, why wait until now to throw a tantrum? Look at all these guests waiting." Someone else tried to smooth things over. All right, she's here now. Let's not make a fuss." Zachary's mother approached me then, her face calm and composed, though her grip on my arm was firm. "Oh, Melissa," she said with a warm smile. "We've all been so worried about you. We couldn't reach you, and we didn't know what was wrong. Did Zachary upset you? If he did, just say the word and we'll handle him." Her husband chimed in, his tone equally gentle. "That's right. Whatever it is, we're on your side. Don't let it ruin the day, all right?" If I'd been marrying Zachary for his family, I wouldn't have hesitated. His parents were kind, understanding, and genuinely lovely people. His mother was thoughtful and warm, and his father had a steady, calming presence. But Zachary had cheated. And no matter how wonderful his family was, that was something I could never forgive. I stayed silent, unsure how to respond. Zachary's mother mistook my silence for stubbornness. She patted my hand and said softly, "Melissa, listen to me. Go get dressed, put on your makeup, and let's get this ceremony started. Once it's over, I promise I'll make Zachary apologize properly." "Yes," his father added, nodding. "Don't let this ruin such a happy occasion." I sighed. For a brief moment, I considered telling them everything, explaining what their precious son had done and ending things right then and there. But before I could speak, someone else entered the room. Fiona. She swept in wearing a stunning white chiffon dress that hugged her figure, her makeup flawless and her hair styled to perfection. Every step she took in her heels was deliberate, the rhythmic clicking drawing every eye in the room. Her smile was sweet, but her gaze landed on me with a thinly veiled smirk. There was no mistaking the challenge in her eyes. "I hope I'm not too late," she said, her voice light and cheerful though every word dripped with mockery. "Congratulations, Melissa. Best wishes for your big day." Chapter 3. I smiled back at her, slow and deliberate. Her white dress was gorgeous, no denying it. Honestly, she looked more like the bride than I did. Fiona, completely unfazed, strolled over to the main table as if she owned the place and settled into the seat beside me, the one meant for Zachary. As she leaned forward to adjust her chair, a flash of light caught my eye. Something on her neck. I stared, my chest tightening as the realization hit me. It was a diamond ring. Not just any diamond ring. It was my ring, the one I had designed myself, every detail carefully chosen. There was only one in the entire world. And now it was dangling from a chain around Fiona's neck like some cheap trinket. My stomach churned. If the wedding had gone as planned, I had no idea what Zachary would have given me. Maybe it's a random substitute. Maybe this exact ring was plucked right off her neck. Either way, the thought made my skin crawl. I dug my nails into my palms, forcing myself to stay calm. My anger simmered to raw, too close to spilling over. And that's when Zachary walked in, the officiant trailing behind him. "Oh, The bride isn't wearing her wedding dress? The officiant's tone was light, almost amused. But this white dress works too, it's stunning. He was looking at Fiona, of course. With her flawless makeup and glamorous outfit, she practically screamed bride. Fiona immediately raised her hands in mock protest, her expression all innocence. "Oh no, no," she said, laughing softly. "I'm not the bride today. Melissa, please don't take it the wrong way." Her words were sweet enough, but her eyes, smug, like she was daring me to react. Zachary, meanwhile, had zero patience left. He stormed over to me, his expression thunderous. "Why aren't you dressed yet?" he snapped. "Why haven't you gone to get ready? Do you even care about this wedding at all?" Before I could respond, he reached for my arm, but his mother stepped in, grabbing his wrist before he could touch me. "Zachary," she said sharply, her voice calm but firm. "There's no need to shout. Talk to her properly. What's the point of being so rude?" Fiona chimed in, her timing impeccable. "Exactly, Melissa is just feeling a little emotional. Zachary, you should try being gentle with her. Don't let this ruin the wedding." Her words were perfectly measured, and her tone was soft and supportive. But her eyes betrayed her, glancing at me with a flicker of condescension that made my blood boil. Zachary, however, was too angry to notice, or maybe he didn't care. His frustration only grew. He pointed at me, his voice rising. "Melissa, enough. You've been acting like a spoiled child all morning. Go change. Now." Fiona reached out then, lightly patting his arm as if to calm him down. "Don't be upset," she said sweetly. "I'll stay and help you greet the guests while Melissa gets ready. Everything will be fine." That was it. I laughed loud and sharp, drawing every eye in the room. "You'll stay and help him greet the guests?" I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Why don't you just marry him for me while you're at it? Save us all the trouble." The room went silent. Zachary's face turned an ugly shade of red. "Melissa?" he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "You've gone too far. How long are you planning to drag this out? Do you have any idea how ridiculous you're making us look?" Fiona, ever the actress, gasped dramatically. She even stomped her foot for effect, the sharp sound of her heel against the floor echoing through the room. "Melissa, please don't misunderstand me," she cried, her voice trembling with fake sincerity. "I was only trying to help. That's all, I swear." I crossed my arms and leaned back, letting her little performance play out. "Help me?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, Fiona, you've been so helpful. You didn't just greet the guests for me, did you? You even helped with the wedding night, didn't you?" For a split second, something flickered in her eyes, satisfaction, maybe even triumph. She was enjoying this. But then, just as quickly, her expression crumbled into something fragile, like I'd just accused her of murder. "Melissa," she whispered, her voice soft and trembling. "I think you've misunderstood." Smack. The sound of my hand meeting her cheek echoed louder than I expected, cutting her off mid-sentence. She froze, her hand flying to her face, her wide eyes filling with shock and humiliation. I leaned in slightly, my voice low but steady. "Save your little act for someone who cares." Chapter 4. "Melissa, are you out of your mind?" Zachary's voice was sharp, his tone brimming with disbelief and fury. Without hesitation, he pulled Fiona into his arms. Fiona looked genuinely stunned, as if she couldn't believe I'd actually slapped her. Her wide eyes filled with tears that hovered there, trembling on her lashes, making her look heartbreakingly pitiful. She buried her face into Zachary's chest, her cheek brushing against his shirt as if seeking comfort. The tears finally spilled, dampening the fabric. Zachary stiffened. Maybe it was the feel of her tears on his skin, or maybe it was her trembling frame in his arms, but when he turned to look at me, his glare was pure fire. "Melissa!" He spat, his voice dripping with venom. "You're nothing but a crazy, jealous shrew. Look at yourself, what part of you could even compare to? Enough!" The shout came from Zachary's father, his voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. Zachary froze mid-rant, his jaw snapping shut as his father stormed forward and grabbed his arm. Zachary's mother followed quickly, her face pale with embarrassment. She moved to Fiona, gently but firmly pulling her out of Zachary's embrace. "Fiona," she said, her tone cold but polite. "This is a family matter. It's not your place to be involved. Please leave." But Zachary wasn't ready to back down. "Is this what you wanted, Melissa? To humiliate me in front of everyone? Are you happy now?" His voice was rising with every word, his frustration spilling over. "What kind of man would ever marry someone as unhinged as you? You're a damn embarrassment. Zachary, stop it!" His mother cried, stepping forward to intervene. She reached for him, trying to calm him down, but he shoved her hand away. "Mom, stay out of this," he snapped. "This wedding is over. She's gone too far, and I'm not letting her get away with this. She needs to be taught a lesson." I smiled. "Oh, Zachary. A lesson? That's rich. Because if anyone's about to learn something today, it's you." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound reverberating through the room like a gunshot. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice ringing loud and clear. "This wedding is over. But the lesson? That's mine to give, not yours." The room fell silent, every pair of eyes on me as I turned and strode toward the large screen at the front of the hall. The officiant, who had been standing awkwardly near the screen, looked like he wanted to bolt. As I approached, he shuffled sideways, clearing the way for me. "Miss," he stammered nervously. "What are you doing?" I ignored him, heading straight for the laptop connected to the screen. My fingers moved quickly as I logged into my account, uploaded the video, and hit play. The screen lit up, and Fiona's face filled the room, smiling, smug, and utterly unrepentant. Her voice rang out loud and clear, amplified by the speakers. "Oh, the groom's great," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "Don't worry, I've tested him out for you." The crowd gasped audibly, the sound rippling through the room like a wave. "Oh, Zachary? He's working late, of course. You know how busy he is." Then came Zachary's own voice, low and teasing. "Fiona, come help me scrub my back. You're just trying to trick me into joining you in the shower, aren't you? Naughty boy." The video ended, leaving Fiona's smug laughter hanging in the air. For a moment, the room was utterly silent. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the sound of breathing seemed muted. Then, smack! The sound of Mr. Zheng's hand striking Zachary's face was deafening. Zachary staggered slightly, his hand flying to his cheek in shock. The red imprint of his father's palm was already visible. "You disgraceful fool!" Mr. Zheng thundered, his voice trembling with fury. "How dare you! You've brought shame to this family, shame to everyone." I turned back to Zachary, my voice steady and resolute. "You want to talk about betrayal, Zachary? Let me remind you, it wasn't me who betrayed this wedding. It was you. You're the one who brought a mistress into our bed. You're the one who ruined everything." His face paled, but I wasn't done. "And should I even mention the stains on the sheets?" I added, my tone sharp as a blade. "Do you really want me to spell it out for everyone here? You're disgusting." I kept talking, kept spitting out words, but by the time I realized it, my vision had blurred. The tears came quietly, uninvited, hot against my cheeks. How could they not? This wasn't some meaningless fling. These years we'd spent together weren't a lie. And now, to watch it all fall apart like this, I'd have to be made of stone not to feel anything. When did the man standing in front of me become so unrecognizable? Once, he'd been different. I remembered the winter mornings when he used to get up before sunrise in the freezing cold to buy my favorite food from a tiny shop across town. He'd keep them warm by tucking them inside his coat, pressing them against his chest until he handed them to me. His skin would be flushed red from the heat, and he'd just stand there grinning like an idiot, so proud of himself for making me happy. I remembered the night the dormitory caught fire. Everyone else was running for their lives, but not Zachary. He'd gone charging straight into the girls' building like a lunatic. If I hadn't been coming back at that exact moment to drag him out, he might have gotten himself killed. I'd never once doubted that he loved me. And maybe once, he truly had. But now, that love was gone. It wasn't love anymore. It was something past tense. Loved. I took a shaky breath and wiped the tears from my face. Zachary was staring at me, his lips parting slightly like he wanted to say something. But no words came. He just stood there looking lost. I didn't wait to see if he'd find the courage to speak. Instead, I turned to face his parents and the guests, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. Everyone, thank you for coming today. I'm truly sorry for the scene I caused. Zachary and I paused, letting the words sink in. Are officially ending things. Please forgive me for the disruption. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't look back. I turned and walked out of the hall, leaving Zachary and everything we'd been behind me. The air outside felt sharp and cold against my skin, but I welcomed it. At least out here, I didn't have to pretend anymore. And then I saw her. Fiona was leaning against the wall just outside the venue, her arms crossed over her chest, her head tilted ever so slightly. She looked like she'd been waiting for me. Well, she said, her voice light and teasing. No wedding today? Where are you headed now? I didn't respond. I simply crossed my arms and stood there, staring at her with the kind of calm she wouldn't have expected. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the pavement. You know, she continued, her tone dripping with condescension. A squirrel might manage to climb up to the top of a tree, but it'll never touch the stars. Someone like you? You're better off finding a regular Joe to settle down with someone at your level. Zachary? He was never yours to begin with. I blinked, and then, to my own surprise, I laughed. Me? I said, raising an eyebrow. Are you saying I'm not good enough for him? Chapter 5. Oh, come on! Don't you think? Fiona snorted, her manicured red nail jabbing in my direction like I was some nuisance in her way. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a condescending smirk. Melissa, she said, dragging out my name with deliberate disdain. You should really learn to know your place. I tilted my head slightly, watching her, a strange calm settling over me. So that's what this was about. Interesting. I said softly, more to myself than to her. Fiona raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting me to lash out or defend myself. Instead, I stepped forward without a word, closing the space between us. Then, in one swift motion, I reached out and yanked the necklace off her neck. Hey! She gasped, stumbling back in shock. This ring, I said, my voice calm but cutting, was something I designed myself. I don't think it suits you. Fiona's face twisted into a mix of anger and disbelief. That was a gift from Zachary, she snapped, lunging forward to grab it. I sidestepped her effortlessly, her outstretched hand missing by a mile. Oh, don't worry, I said with an almost bored tone. You can have it if you really want it. With that, I turned and tossed the ring and her necklace into the trash can next to us. The clink of metal hitting the bottom echoed sharply in the tense silence between us. Fiona stared at the trash can, her eyes wide with outrage. Garbage belongs in the garbage, I said coolly, cutting her off. If you want to dig it out, feel free. It's yours now. Zachary included. Her mouth fell open as she tried to process what I'd just said, but I wasn't interested in sticking around to see her reaction. With one last glance, I turned and walked away. The next morning, I was woken up by a loud, insistent knock at my door. I groaned, dragging myself out of bed, and opened the door to find Zachary standing there. He looked awful. His face was pale, his hair a mess, and the dark circles under his eyes made him look like he hadn't slept all night. In his hands was a small paper bag, and he held it up with a shaky, hopeful smile. "Melissa?" he said, his voice soft and almost pleading. "I got your favorite sandwich. They're fresh. Still warm." I stared at him, silent. For a moment, I felt a faint flicker of something nostalgia, maybe. I remembered the mornings he used to show up with those same sandwich, his face lit up with excitement just to see me smile. Back then, gestures like this had felt sweet, thoughtful, full of love. But now, it felt like nothing more than an apology he thought he could buy. A cheap attempt to erase everything he'd done. I didn't say a word. I just reached out, pushed him aside, and moved to shut the door. "Wait," he said quickly, stepping forward and blocking the door with his hand. His voice cracked with desperation. "Please, just hear me out. I know I messed up. I'll do anything to fix this. Just give me another chance." I raised an eyebrow, unmoved. "It was just a mistake." He went on, his words spilling out in a rush. "A moment of weakness. She came on to me, you know that, right? I don't care about her. I never have. It's always been you. You're the only one I love. Please, believe me." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Oh." His face brightened slightly as if he thought I was starting to come around. But I just shook my head. "Cheating is cheating, Zachary," I said, my voice flat. "Whether it's a moment of weakness or something else, it doesn't change what you did. And the fact that you're standing here blaming someone else for your choices?" I looked him in the eye. "That's pathetic." For the first time in days, everything felt clear. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was just done. "Melissa, please," he said, his voice breaking. "We've come so far. Don't throw it all away. I swear I'll never do it again. Just give me one last chance." I met his gaze, my expression calm and unwavering. "Zachary," I said slowly, enunciating each word. "I don't care if you never do it again. Because the truth is..." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy between us. "I find you disgusting." He froze, his face pale, his lips parting slightly as if he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "Disgusting?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I said simply. "Disgusting. And honestly, I don't care how sorry you are. I don't care how many promises you make. I'm done." His eyes reddened instantly, tears threatening to spill as he blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back. But then, almost predictably, his sadness turned to anger. "You're acting like I committed some unforgivable sin," he snapped, his voice rising. "I just made the same mistake every man makes. Can't you let it go? I've already said I'm sorry. What more do you want from me?" I stared at him, unfazed by his outburst. "Zachary," I said, my tone calm but sharp enough to cut. "You keep saying you love me. But do you? Or are you just scared of losing the business deals tied to me?" His face went stark white. I tilted my head, offering him a faint, humorless smile. "That's what I thought. In that case, let me make it easier for you. Our company won't be working with yours anymore. Consider it a clean break for both of us." And before he could say another word, I shut the door in his face. Chapter 6. What got used to handouts and think it's your own ability? Or did you think my company was yours? I looked at him with disdain, feeling a strange satisfaction seeing his angry but helpless expression. Your company has been thriving because of our stable projects. Without my support, you wouldn't even qualify to bid for our projects. Zachary, I can feed you, and I can make you spit it all out. I was too considerate of you before, making you forget that I'm the one in charge. I spoke mercilessly, each word hitting him where it hurt. Zachary's face lost all color, his eyes filled with panic and pleading. Melissa, please forgive me this once. Zachary, do you really think I can't live without you? A moment of passion? That was the wedding bed I meticulously arranged. What were you thinking while you were fooling around with your mistress on it? Was it thrilling? You are truly filthy and disgusting. Zachary's lips trembled, but he couldn't find any words to say. I didn't look at him again and walked straight out of the door to head to the office. The driver was already waiting for me downstairs. As soon as I got in the car, I called the project manager who was handling the business with Zachary's company. Don't sign the contract. Yes, terminate all projects. You're at their office? Wait there for me. I'll handle the termination personally. For my company, the projects with Zachary's company were just minor ones, but for his small company, they were crucial for survival. When I arrived at his company with my assistant, I saw Fiona in her high heels and bright red lipstick. She probably thought I was there to cause trouble for Zachary and tried to stop me. Melissa, do you have no shame? If you want to throw a tantrum, pick a better time. This isn't the place for your nonsense. She reached out to grab me. I sidestepped her and continued walking upstairs. She shouted angrily. Stop right there. Where are the security guards? I ignored her and headed straight to the conference room. My assistant held her back. I pushed open the conference room door. Inside, my company's project manager and Zachary's company's project leaders looked up. Did you come to the wrong place? Before Zachary's people could finish, my project manager made room for me. Fiona finally caught up, pointing at me and accusing. Are you crazy? Today is the biggest project meeting for the company. Who do you think you are, barging in here? I'm warning you. Fiona! Zachary's voice cut her off. He had just received the notice that I was terminating the contract and rushed over. Fiona thought he was defending me and became even more furious. Mr. Zachary, it's Melissa who's being unreasonable. You know. At this point, both companies' representatives stood up to greet me. Melissa, why did you come personally? Please, have a seat, Melissa. Fiona looked around in disbelief, glancing between Zachary and me, completely confused. Zachary, however, had no time to explain to her. His face was pale as he pleaded with me. Melissa, can we continue the project? I waved my hand. I had come in person to show my stance clearly, with no room for negotiation. Our company will not renew the contract with yours. Ongoing projects will be terminated. Any necessary compensation will be handled by our legal team. Fiona, blinking rapidly, stammered. You're the CEO of Walker Group? Not just the CEO, but the executive president and the largest shareholder. I smiled at her shocked expression. I like to turn things I don't want into trash before throwing them away. I hope you still like it when that happens. Chapter 7. Fiona seemed to recover, thinking I was exaggerating. She probably didn't realize Zachary's company depended entirely on my support. She might have thought losing one big client was no big deal. So she snorted and was about to mock me when Zachary interrupted. Zachary forced a stiff smile, finally recognizing the reality but still trying. Melissa, don't make a hasty decision. Our cooperation is profitable. Terminating the contract and paying penalties isn't wise. I shook my head, tapping my fingers on the table. I don't care about the money, but you will go bankrupt. Zachary glared at me, his face darkening. We've been partners for so long, with significant annual profits. Terminating the contract and paying penalties, will the other shareholders agree? I laughed. This was the final reveal. No wonder he dared to betray me, he had become too arrogant. I didn't mind telling him. Zachary, did you think I didn't know about your attempts to contact my company's shareholders? Zachary was stunned. You knew? Don't be too greedy. Zachary, I've given you many chances. You wanted to keep your main relationship while having affairs. You've been enjoying the benefits from my company while trying to dilute my shares. I glanced at my company's representatives, signaling it was time to leave. As I walked out of the conference room, I could hear Zachary and Fiona arguing loudly. What do you mean? Will the company really go bankrupt? So what if it does? I can start over. Don't cause trouble now. Am I causing trouble, or are you a useless freeloader? If you hadn't exposed everything, how would it come to this? It's your own fault for being weak. Now you're blaming me? I was quite busy. As soon as I arrived at the office, my secretary brought me a pile of documents. I called the project manager. This project isn't urgent. Just bring me the project proposal later. Yes, Melissa. The project manager was visibly happy, working with renewed enthusiasm. He had grown tired of cooperating with Zachary's company, often having to lower our standards to accommodate them, which was frustrating. I called my capable assistant and instructed him to handle the acquisition of Zachary's company, using any necessary means. Business is business after all. I spent the rest of the day in meetings, staying busy enough to avoid dwelling on unnecessary thoughts. But I suddenly felt I could use a vacation. I decided to hire a professional manager through a headhunter to run the company. Money is meant to be spent, not just earned and saved. The world is vast, and I wanted to see it. Just as I was preparing to take a long vacation, Zachary showed up again. Chapter 8. I was surprised. I thought we had already cut ties, but he still dared to come. That day, I had just finished work and was in the underground parking lot when I saw him standing by my car. He was holding a large strawberry bear, dressed casually in clean, fresh clothes, smiling with a mouthful of white teeth. He called out, "Melissa, I came to pick you up from work." Seeing me standing by the elevator without moving, he approached and shoved the strawberry bear into my arms. I found it amusing. He still knew what I liked. But he was no longer the youthful, energetic man with a fit body from playing basketball. I looked at his slightly bulging belly and no longer clear eyes, shaking my head in disdain. I quickly returned the strawberry bear to him. Without looking back, I got into my car, closed the door, and drove off, leaving him to eat my car's exhaust. I patted my chest, feeling relieved. He was depleting the last of my memories of him. When I got home and parked, I received a call from Zachary's mother. "Melissa, can you come to Zachary's place? I know I shouldn't trouble you, but Zachary, he's threatening to jump. I don't know what to do. Please help me." Zachary's mother was crying, desperate and guilty. I sighed deeply and went over. Zachary was constantly surprising me. Was he suddenly insane, resorting to such measures? He lived in a high-rise, and the rooftop was on the 22nd floor. When I arrived, firefighters were already trying to talk him down, but he refused to come down. I learned the situation. Zachary wanted to win me back, so he fired Fiona to show his loyalty. They had a fight, and Fiona's harsh words drove him to the rooftop. I found it laughable. If he was mentally fragile, I would rather believe he was trying to force me to give in. Zachary's mother was crying non-stop, and his father was sighing and slapping his thigh. Fiona, on the other hand, was unusually quiet. Zachary's eyes turned red when he saw me. "Melissa, if I jump, will you forgive me?" So, this was his plan. "No, Zachary, don't do this. What am I supposed to do if you jump?" Zachary's mother was terrified, crying and pleading. But Zachary only stared at me. Zachary's mother begged me. "Melissa, please promise him. I'll kneel if I have to." I quickly supported her. "Fine, I forgive you." It didn't matter anymore. Holding a grudge was a waste of emotion. Chapter 9. At that moment, Fiona, who had been silent, spoke up. "Do you believe her? As long as you're alive, she'll never forgive you. You've lost everything your career, her. What's the point of living? Wow, this woman was ruthless. She really wanted Zachary to die. Fiona's face twisted with malice. Her sudden outburst caught everyone off guard. The firefighters quickly covered her mouth. Zachary's eyes turned bloodshot, and he moved closer to the edge. I quickly shouted, "Zachary, do you know why I stopped the projects?" Zachary looked confused but turned his head. "Because I cheated with Fiona. It's my fault." I signaled to the firefighters and shook my head. "I don't hate you that much. If it were just that, I would have left you but not cut off your finances. You have potential. Work hard and your company will thrive. The reason I did this is because of Fiona. She leaked your company's secrets. Continuing the project would have implicated us both." Zachary's attention shifted. He glared at Fiona, shouting, "Fiona, did you approach me to ruin me?" Fiona wanted to deny it, but the firefighters held her back, and she could only shake her head vigorously. At that moment, the firefighters seized the opportunity and pulled Zachary back from the edge. Zachary's mother collapsed to the ground, her legs giving out. Zachary's father quickly helped her up. Zachary, looking dazed and clearly unwell, was escorted downstairs to be taken to the hospital. I followed them, ready to leave. The firefighters released Fiona. Fiona's eyes were filled with hatred as she suddenly lunged at me. "Melissa! You bitch! Because of you, I've lost everything. Die!" Chapter 10. Fiona's sudden attack caught everyone off guard. She tried to push me off the building, her strength and speed fueled by madness. No one had time to react. Zachary's mother screamed, trying to stop her but failing. I instinctively grabbed a nearby pillar, but it only slowed my fall. At the critical moment, the firefighter who had controlled Fiona earlier threw his helmet, hitting her leg. Fiona stumbled, falling on top of me, just inches from the edge. I hit the ground hard, my back aching, nearly losing consciousness. Fiona, however, landed on me, unhurt. She struggled to push me again but was restrained by the firefighter. "Let me go. I want to kill Melissa." Fiona was forcibly taken away, still struggling. I lay there for a few seconds, my organs feeling displaced, before getting up. My fingers, injured from grabbing the pillar, throbbed with pain. Zachary, seemingly more lucid, looked at Fiona being taken away and apologized. "I'm sorry, Melissa. I'll pursue Fiona for leaking secrets." I didn't scold him, just gave him a long look before leaving. That was the last time I saw Zachary. Later, I heard from friends that Zachary had taken some mental health medication, which clouded his judgment and led to the rooftop incident. Fiona, desperate to marry him and elevate her status, didn't realize he was a Phoenix man, a man who appeared successful but relied heavily on others. She had leaked important company information to competitors, and when Zachary tried to fire her, she went mad, drugging him in a bid for a tragic end together. She was sentenced to several years for intentional harm and economic crimes, receiving her due punishment. I wasn't seriously injured and was discharged the same day. The headhunter quickly found a highly qualified general manager for me, and I booked a flight to Hawaii. The ocean was beautiful, with sunny beaches. I spent my days relaxing and enjoying life. There, I discovered many tall, handsome men with abs. I even met one who had a bright, sunny smile.